Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us at today's webinar with Stand With Me and Polygon Education Fund. Today's webinar will be on Congressional Advocacy 101. And just to get started, I'll tell you a little bit about our organization, and then I'll hand it over to Polygon, our dear colleagues at Polygon, to continue the presentation and give us their best tips and tricks on engaging with our representatives. Just some housekeeping notes. Everyone is muted currently, and we will be speaking for at least half an hour to 45 minutes, and then we'll follow up with 15 to 20 minutes of Q&A at the end. If you have any questions throughout the program, please add your remarks in the chat box, which you can access at the top of the window that you are viewing. There's a little chat bubble, and you can click on that, and you can communicate with myself, Atia Nasser with Stand With Me, or with our dear colleagues at Polygon Education Fund. And just to let you know, this program is also being recorded, and so if you miss something or if you have friends who are interested but unable to attend, you can share this with them as well. So Stand With Me is an organization that was started a couple months ago, almost in response to the recent elections, by Asan Zafar, who is a human rights advocate in the DC area, and a few other people. And our goal is to rapidly connect communities under threat to resources, allies, and each other. And we do this through a few different mechanisms. We host discussions with different communities to identify what issues are taking place on the ground or at a grassroots level. And then we also do digital convenings, such as similar to this webinar, to help and connect all of our people together and provide resources. And we hope that that will ultimately lead into local action by creating communities across the country who can then act upon issues that are taking place relevant to them. And we can't do this alone, so we're always looking for people to assist us and to help us out. You can start a discussion, or you can join our mailing list, and you can sign up to become a local captain with us too. And you can find out more at standwithmenow.com. And now for the main information of this program, I'll be passing over the roles to our colleagues at Polygon Education Fund. Just bear 1 second.
Us. We are Polygon Education Fund. We launched in January of 2017 in order to strengthen Muslim American Congress. And the reason why we started Polygon was because we saw that there was a lack of education in the Muslim community about how Muslims should engage with Congress. So I personally worked at a Quaker lobby in Middle East policy and was able to learn there how faith-based advocacy could work successfully. And I wanted to help pass that on to the Muslim community. And also done some organizing in Boston with mass Muslims, and so we came together to create Polygon. So today we're going to talk about Congressional Advocacy, which is basically going to discuss how you guys can plug in with your members of Congress. We have a lot of information on our website, first of all, so if you miss anything, you can always go there and check it out. You can always see our resources there. So everything that we're going to go over today is most on our website. So we'll go to the first slide. Well, we already did that. So we'll go to the second one. Of striving for justice is a part of faith. So basically, the point that we want to make is that when Muslims think about political engagement, it's often the last thing that comes to our mind, right? We're very eager to build new mosques. We're very eager to have civic engagement, or sorry, not civic engagement organizations, to charity, whether it's abroad or overseas, some sort of humanitarian relief work, and that's all well and good, and it's necessary, but it is also necessary to work here at home in being civically engaged. So one quote that motivates me a lot is this hadith or prophetic saying by the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, where he says, "Whosoever of you sees an evil with his hand, and if he is not able to do so, then let him change it with his tongue. And if he's not able to do so, then with his heart. And that is the weakest of faith." So I'm trying to empower Muslims and their allies to be able to change evil or strive for justice with their hands and their tongues. We want to take an active role, and that's what we're trying do here. So go to the next slide. I want to talk briefly about hashtag activism. And this is something that our community is pretty good about, and joining in petitions, whether it's on Black Lives Matter or Coney 12, or Bring Back Our Girls, or the Chapel Hill shooting. Some of these kind of died down and were misplaced. And this is kind of tying into the idea of social media, is that many of us will sit on our Facebook, on our Twitter feeds, and think that if we just retweet a photo, or if we, write something related to a hashtag, that it's going to make a policy change. Unfortunately, the fact of the matter is more likely than not, it's not going to. It takes a lot of mobilization in order to create policy change, and you also have to connect directly with policymakers. So whether you're Muslim or not, this is something that I think plagues a lot of people in our society, is that social media has made it so easy to feel like you're connected to an issue and engaged in an issue, which is great, but you still have to take it to the next level, and you still have to, go ahead and try to policy impact by being directly engaged. But if we take the next one of how exactly we can do that.
Hey folks, so in terms of questions to think about, clearly social media plays a significant role. It's a sort of it's a nice entry point for folks to be engaged in a way that isn't too stressful, that sort of is aligned with, aligned with the habits and the behaviors of everyday folks. People, check in social media online, where they get, that's a primary source of much of their information. But in terms of, questions to think about as to why you should be engaged and why you should engage with Congress and engage with folks that you have elected yourselves, to the highest, highest public offices, or even public offices at home in your own locality, it's important to consider what are some injustices or opportunities for social change do you see in your daily life. It's important for us as private citizens, as folks who live in this country, to understand our own capacity and our own agency in being a key part in bringing about social change, because social change is not merely some amorphous topic that is irrelevant to our daily lives. We find out that, whether it's something that is based on our identity, or something that's relevant to our community, or something that is relevant to our values and principles, there's always opportunities for improvement in our country, both locally and nationally. So, it's important for us to realize that, and to assess what are the tools that we have in our capacity, and what are the tools that we have within our current circumstances, and how can you sort of change them. Think about any sort of small changes that you've probably made, whether in the workplace, or whether at home, or whether in the neighborhood. How did you utilize your role in your agency as a student, as a spouse, as a child, as a parent, and as a professional, and whatever you're trained to sort of enact change, to focus on a goal, to organize people around you, to galvanize support for a particular mission, and to execute maybe a unplanned or concerted campaign towards bringing about that change. And also, it's important. It's another way to also reflect on the sort of the skills that you've been trained in, whether through work, whether through school, to sort of understand what are the special knowledge and skills and networks that you bring to the table. When you do an honest self-assessment of sort of the capacity that you bring in terms of knowledge, in terms of your social networks, both online and offline, and the particular skills that you've cultivated, you realize that you do have a particular edge, and then you can approach social change in a way that not only addresses your needs and your concerns and your efforts, but also it also has a flavor that is catered to what you bring to the table as well. Next slide. So when it comes to congressional advocacy, reaching out to Congress, to your congressional representatives, there are two primary houses of legislative legislative representation in the United States government, and that is the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives. And in fact, it's actually really easy to figure out who your representative is and who your Congress people are in both of these houses. You can visit senate.gov and you can visit house.gov, and they will have a particular portal there for you to enter your zip code or your state, so you can determine who your representative is, who represents your district, your congressional district, and your state at the national level. And the interesting thing about representatives at the national level, the local area, is that they all have emails and they all have phone numbers that you can contact directly. So the national office particularly deals with legislative and policy matters that are both domestic and international in nature. One of the easiest ways to do so is to contact your representative at the national office is by phone. There's a Capitol switchboard which you can call. So I'd really advise you all to look at this number, 202-224-3121. Please record this for your own personal benefit, because this is a sort of a one-size-fits-all number that allows you to access a directory where you can be directed towards your particular representative in your particular Senate.
Put it on speed dial. Yeah, put it on speed dial and just call when you're sitting in traffic or whenever you have a free minute. That's a great number to keep in your phone.
Absolutely. And so that's for the particular office of your particular representative or of your particular senator that can direct you to them as well. There are also committees that, for example, if you have a particular concern about a particular bill, about a particular issue, it's safe to say that that particular issue or bill will be referred to a particular committee that is specialized and that has been organized to deal with those issues, whether it's foreign affairs, whether it's urban affairs and housing, whether it's banking and finance, or whether it's commerce or labor. So, looking online and paying attention to which committees your particular issues are relevant to is also significant and important, and they do have their own individual phone numbers and offices that can manage your requests as well when you contact them. And then finally, the interesting thing about also having representatives at the national level is that they also must have, and they do have, local district offices for more personal concerns. Whether you have an issue with the fact that the roads are unpaved in your neighborhood, that the funding in your school district is of concern, that you haven't received Social Security payments, in the past couple months, sort of for more personal concerns that have that are connected to national level legislation, you have your local district office that you can actually visit and that you can call and reach out to for personal concerns. And then finally, in addition to reaching out to your the local offices of national representatives, you also have your state representatives and folks that you can reach out to for state and local level concerns as well. So you have a whole arsenal and you have a whole sort of directory of representatives, of offices, of phone numbers, and which means phone numbers and emails and offices that you can reach out to when advocating for a particular issue. Next slide, please.
All right, so when you're actually calling somebody, what are you going to get? Like, who is going to pick up the phone? Basically, it's going to be a staff or an intern that's going to pick up the phone. They may or may not be well-versed on the issue, so it's important for you to keep your message short and sweet. So if you decide that you're going to do the phone or email route, make sure you're a constituent. So what Afif mentioned earlier was, typing in your zip code and making sure you're their constituent. Congressmen will probably are more likely to pay attention to you if you're an actual constituent. If you're an actual voter, then they can think because it's their job to represent you. So have your script ready and keep it sweet. I know everybody has a ton of issues they would love to have their congressman cover, but try to keep it to one issue per call or email and keep it respectful no matter how angry you are about the issue. I've had stories where members of Congress would tell me that, somebody was very angry about a certain issue and they just called them and started like yelling into the phone, or when they saw them, they were yelling. And nobody wants to listen to you when you're hostile, no matter how correct you might be or how you know, how meaningful your message is. It's very important to be respectful, to have a civil conversation. So the script will help you with that. And so here we have an example that we use when I was working with the Quakers on the Iran nuclear agreement. And so literally you can just replace Iran deal with whatever you want. So you just, hi, I'll do something, well, hi, my name is Warda, and I, you know, one of their, I don't know, Cruz, because actually one of my representatives, constituents from Texas. I'm calling to tell him that I want him to whatever. And it is, the reason why I'm saying that is because, say it's like water. Because the water in my district, it has not been clean. It affects me, it affects my family and my community, whatever. It's that simple. And what they'll say is, okay, thank you so much for your message. We'll write it down and we'll pass it on to Congress. It's really that easy if you want to do it through phone or email. And sometimes you can't get in because the phones are busy. There's actually apps that will help you by recording a message and then keep calling the congressperson's office until they do take your phone or take your message. So you could do that if you want. But for high time, non-peak time, this is something really basic that you can use. Next slide. All right, so what about if you're going to do an office visit? So an office visit takes a little bit more time, and I think this is what most are going to want to be trained on. Just so you guys know, if you're in the DC area or DMV or New York or wherever, and you can come to DC on May 7th, we'll be doing an in-person training that'll go into this in depth, as well as what we're going to cover on the next slide, which is town hall. This will just give you a good overview where you can get started. But if you do want a deeper training, we're going to offer that next month. So for office visits are really important because they allow you to do face-to-face meetings with a member of Congress. They put a face to the name. So you can send a bunch of emails or you can do a bunch of calls, but until the staff see you in person, and if they see you, they're going to start remembering you and they're going to start paying attention to you. So face-to-face visits are actually very important and can make a difference. I know for one representative that I worked with, again, when I was working with the Quakers, there was a group called the Minnesota Peace Group, and they would meet with their senator every single year, and they had a lot of people behind them in the district. And the senator knew that, and so when they were in DC, he would meet with them personally, which is very rare. Usually a staff will meet with you. But he would meet with them personally because he knew they were dedicated and they would come in and take the district and in DC. And so, you know, that made an impact and you would listen to what they had to say. So that's just an example of why in-district visits are so important or why national visits are so important. So how do you schedule your meetings? So normally if you go to a congressperson's website, you can go and see a part where it says like schedule meetings. You can either schedule a meeting or sometimes you'll have like coffees that you can go to. These certain days of the week, and they might do once a month. So if people happen to be in DC at the time, they can go to a morning coffee where you get a face-to-face time with your member of Congress. You can pass along any of their staff, and you can kind of get some face time that way in case you're not able to get a personal appointment with them. So just keep an eye out for that. So once you go to their website and you see where you schedule a meeting, you'll choose in district or in DC. Put in your contact information, and then they'll give you confirmation where a staffer will tell you the date or time the meeting should be scheduled, and it's really simple. Before you actually go to a meeting, there's going to be a lot of work. It's not that simple. It's not hard, but it requires prep work. Kind of like going to an exam where you have to do your homework, you have to do a little bit of homework. So the first thing you need to do is learn about your member. So what is your member passionate about? Does he sit on any committees? What is his voting record on the particular issue that you're visiting them on water? Okay, what did they vote on an environmental bill that went through Congress last year? What is the record? And so make sure you look at that as well as any public statements that they've made so that you don't go in completely contrary to the record or say they are supporting something already and you're like, well, you should support this, I'll turn to you and say, like, actually, the congressman already does support it. So you don't want to look like you haven't done your homework. So you figure out the issue area that you want to talk about, as well as where the congressman stands on it. It may be that you don't know where the congressman stands on something. It might be kind of early in the game. And in that case, you kind of want to gauge where he's at or what he's thinking or what his staff are thinking, and that's totally okay too. But just make sure you do your research. So when it comes to organizing the meeting, it's good to, if you have a group of people go with you, it's good to separate different people into different roles. If you're one person, then obviously you would take on all of these roles yourself. But it's very important that you incorporate these 4 things into your visit. So number 1 is the facilitator. So this is the person who's kind of the, they're kind of the public lead of the group. So they are the ones that are going to start the meeting by introducing the group, talking about the purpose of your visit, you know, which cities you're from, and you're also the point person. So you're kind of in charge of steering the direction of the conversation to these different steps. Also, if the staffer wants to follow up, or you should be the person to follow up after the meeting. The next person are the personal stories. So after you do your introductions, it's everybody in the group to introduce themselves. So share a little bit about their background or how they're connected to the member of Congress or what city they live in, or maybe what they do, or if the personal story affected them, like if there's dirty water in my town, that is the time to mention that. And these staffers are going to record this information. So if they ever make a public statement or say anything about it, they can cite what you said. They can say, you know, I had some of my constituents had this concern and they said X, Y, and Z. So that's kind of where that'll come into play. It'll also humanize an issue. You know, sometimes if we're just, you know, talking about policy, it can become really, you know, it doesn't really show how it impacts you personally. So a personal story is really good for explaining that. The next issue point. So make sure you try to provide some data to back up your claim. So for instance, how many people in the city are experiencing dirty water? Or if you're talking about Muslim, anti-Muslim crimes, you could cite national data. Like there was a really great ISPU, the Institute of Social Policy and Understanding study that just came out talking about discrimination and things Muslims face, or just a regular stat about how, you know, hate crimes have reached their highest level since 9/11. Having these available, along with background information in a one-pager, it's literally called a one-pager, and a leave behind for staffers. So after the meeting, staff can go back and kind of look at the data points you've collected and use it to help them make their decision. We have a lot of good one-pagers on our website. So if you go to our website and go to issue areas, you'll see them on Islamophobia and bullying, on, I can't remember what the other ones are, but there's a lot of different ones on there. If you go there, you will see that, and you know, feel free to take those out or take those or use those as background information. And then finally is the last part is ask. So you're there for a purpose, so you want to know, you know, if you're talking about a particular piece of legislation, you know, would the congressperson be willing to sign it? Or if you don't want them to sign it, like, could you make sure, like, asking them, will you oppose this piece of legislation? Would you like them to introduce a piece of legislation or a resolution? Now is the time where you would ask, you know, what are you going to do? If it's kind of a new issue, it's sufficient to say, what is the congressperson or what is the congressman thinking at this point? It's totally okay to say that. So that'll conclude the visit, and then after you finish, take a second or take a few minutes to go outside and debrief about how your visit went. How receptive was the staffer to you? Were they nodding their head, and afterwards did they say like, yeah, this is great, thanks for coming, definitely follow up, and you know, this is really helpful? Did they give you any kind of indication of which way they're leaning? Record what you found out and what you still need to know. And you know, feel free to report that back to us. We definitely want you to be in touch with local communities and how their visits are going. And so we'd love for you to tell us how your visits went. And then finally, follow up. Immediately after the visit, maybe a few days or a week after, go ahead and email that same staff that you met with, and they'll give you their card during the meeting, and thank them for the visit, and follow up on any additional information that they requested, as well as any of your specific asks. So, you know, if you were waiting to find out how they were going to vote on something, that is the time to ask. And ask kind of the point person. Next slide. All right, so the next thing is town halls. Town halls are a little bit different because you're not in a personal meeting. You be in an arena with several hundred people, so it's a little bit harder to make your voice heard. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be prepared to do so. So town halls are really, really cool because basically a lot of times during in-district week, which is when Congress is in recess, so they're not in session, they'll go back to their home district and set up town halls to meet with the people they represent. It's an excellent, excellent time to go and personally meet with representatives if possible. So before you go, prepare something about, you know, if you do get a chance to speak, raise your hand and speak, what would you say? We posted some good things on our Instagram and our Facebook page of good videos. And the first thing that you would want to do is, of course, introduce yourself. And you're going to kind of use the same things that we talked about with office visit. So what city are you from? How long have you lived in the area? Are you representing a specific community? Are you in charge of a labor union? Are you part of a mosque? Are you part of a school? That's a good way to mention, and also kind of like contextualize your relationship with the representative. Thank you for being there. You know, even if you have kind of an angry message to give, or even if you don't agree with what the congressperson is doing, again, respect goes a long way. So begin by thanking your member for being there, especially in this day and age where members are canceling their town halls sometimes. It's a big thing if a member still does his town hall. So thank them for being there, and it makes them more receptive to it. Tell a brief story. So kind of like we talked about with the office visit, you're going to have less time. So usually office visits are about 15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. If the office visit goes, be able to get 30 minutes of the staffer's time. But for a town hall, you really only have a couple of minutes. So you need to be able to tell your story very briefly, but you need to make sure it's powerful. So talk about the topic. So for instance, we'll just use the one example again. Say, hi, I'm Warda Khalid. I'm your constituent from Houston. I would like to speak about the environment and the water issue. And then you could tell a personal story of how the issue affected the community you represent. And also make sure that it's strong and succeeds. And then finally, make your ask, just like we talked about before. Make a clear, direct ask. Are you going to vote for this piece of legislation, or are you going to legislation? And for example, we have an example here that says regarding the executive order. So that says, the president has already signed an executive order that revokes the protection of Muslims with green cards and valid visas traveling to the U.S. Can we count on you to condemn these actions publicly, or do you agree to co-sponsor bills such as Bill that seeks to protect American Muslim communities without any conditions? And so you want to make sure your ask is clear, because it's very easy for people who don't want to answer the question, whether that's a representative or somebody outside of the setting, to say that, you know, just kind of like take it however they want it. So you want to make sure your answer is clear. And it's actually even better if you do a yes or no question, because then they can't really found it. And then finally follow up. After some time to go speak with staff or the congressman themselves if you weren't able to their concerns during the event. You can get staffers' contact information to follow up with them later, to hold them accountable for the vote, to help hold them accountable for what they said. And it'll also lay the groundwork for future in-district or DC meetings. So you can say, hi, I'm so-and-so, I attended your town hall here. Would you be willing to do a meeting with me to discuss this issue further? That's totally cool. You know, it's a very effective way to kind of start to build that relationship. And that's what we want to do, is you want to build relationships. Going and advocating with your member of Congress is not a one-time thing at all. It is definitely about having consistent engagement over years if the congressperson is there for that long, and that's how you get face time, and that's how you get influence with the member of Congress. Some tips: they fill up very quickly, and then also practice. Like I said, you only have a couple of minutes to talk, so you want to make sure that you use every minute of that. So get a friend and practice with your introduction to story and your questions in advance. Next slide, and let's kick it off to Aziz.
Awesome. It's important to note that advocacy can be a deeply personal endeavor and effort. It can be time if you haven't really engaged with your representatives and have done any sort of direct advocacy work that Wertha was outlining in her previous slides, then don't worry. You don't need to feel like you're carrying the weight of an entire campaign on your back. It's important to be deeply personal. It's important to be honest and upfront about how a particular issue impacts you. And it's also important to realize that your social networks, your family and your friends can also be of help to you, and organizations like the Polygon Education Fund and other organizations and advocacy organizations in your localities or in your districts that are focused on congressional advocacy work, that are focused on representing their constituency, in front of congressional representatives on particular issues. So, don't need to be scared. Don't need to feel like, the whole weight and the whole fate of the matter, is weighed on your back, or that you have to carry that entire weight. Do the best that you can, to gather information and data, and stay in touch with organizations like us, like the Polygon Education Fund and other advocacy groups. We can always be a resource as we do our own work to represent, folks like yourselves in front of Congress. We also want to be a resource to you and help keep you educated with facts and figures that you want to use when you meet them as well. So, don't be scared, and also encourage your family and friends to join you. As I mentioned, it's a deeply, when it comes to advocacy, of course, you care about your community and you care about your own family and yourself. So, encourage those around you who are similarly passionate to join you. It's actually a great endeavor. Kudos to the folks who feel confident enough to approach Congress members on their own and are really passionate and have the audacity to make an ask in front of a legislator. But you can always feel more confident and always feel as if you're part of a greater cause when you do with your family and with friends and other concerned community members as well. So feel free to not feel like you're alone in this. Engage organizations like ours and engage members of your community who similarly care about this as well. And then finally, you don't have to be an expert. As I mentioned, you can reach out to organizations like ours, and we can help you with talking points. In fact, if you subscribe to Polygon National's email list, we regularly have action alerts where we provide scripts for people to use when engaging their Congress members on particular issues. So, feel free to, when doing your preparation, when learning about your legislator, to reach out to these organizations and to subscribe to their updates on Facebook, Twitter, on all social media outlets, and through email to get access to some of the content. You don't need to, only rely on yourself to get access to, rely on yourself to sort of come up with the content yourself, but organizations like ours are dedicated to bringing that to you as well. It's important, especially when you're persistent, when you're passionate about a particular issue, to have regular contact with your members. I know we've been in contact with staffers in various offices. When they take your call, they record. They love to record what your address is to make sure that you are a constituent and someone in, your ask is much more powerful when you are a constituent. But your ask is also very similarly powerful because they have a database where they record every single call that comes in. And interns are trained on this and staffers are trained on this, that whenever they receive a call, that they always record the call and the content of the call in a particular database. And making regular contact over the phone or through email, and believe me, people still do send letters. So sending letters is also a very powerful way as well. But when you make regular contact, it is even that much more powerful. And when you organize your family and friends to join you on a particular campaign, it is even that much more powerful, because representatives and legislators it is up to them when an issue comes up in Congress. They don't only consider their own moral standing on a particular issue, but also they want to know and take a pulse of their community. What do my own constituents say about this? How does this affect my constituency? And if you ever have the time and the ability to look at and hear legislators in Congress, sometimes they deliver speeches on this. They always pull from the stories that constituents like yourself and your family and friends, they always pull stories from them in order to deliver to their fellow colleagues in Congress so that they can sway people to vote one way or another. So they're always constantly listening and trying to find stories and trying to find facts and figures that they can convey and make a solid case in front of their colleagues before voting actually comes. And so make visits, make contact regular, and be a familiar face. It is your representative. Your representatives represent and answer to you. Of course, representatives, if at the purest form, are elected because they care about their constituents, they care about the issues, and they want to make their community and this nation a greater place. But there are also, of course, other political considerations made. And representatives want to stay in office. They realize that because folks have voted them in, they need to answer to their voters as well. And if they want to seek re-election, it is a consideration that they make, that they answer to their constituents, and it makes that even more powerful as well. So remember that, one voice is extremely powerful, one story is extremely powerful, and being honest and being prepared and engaging with stakeholders and family and friends and other organizations is really important. So that you have a lot of power as an individual voice, and when people feel that they have that power, they will be able to make change happen. So in terms of what are our next steps, as I mentioned before, please subscribe to Polygon's mailing list. We have weekly legislative updates called Hill Happenings, where we track legislation that in particular impacts the American Muslim community, but are also issues that sort of in the public interest. And we have action alerts where we encourage folks to call their representatives, and we give them scripts and we give them talking points so that they can convey their concern to the representatives as well. Of course, we live in a pretty tenuous time, unfortunately, where there's been an uptick in hate crimes. It is important, in addition to contacting, of course, law enforcement, please report any incidences that you have to Stand With Me and subscribe to their list. They are doing a phenomenal job in terms of promoting and encouraging discourse around community and around engagement across lines of diversity, and also at the same time trying to create a network of individuals who stay alert violence or aggressions against anyone based on ethnic or racial reasons. And then finally, organize locally. Take trips to Capitol Hill or take trips to the district office and sign petitions, and do some phone banking as well. When a concern comes up, please do encourage your friends to also make calls to the representatives and legislators as well. And another thing that's also pretty useful is subscribing to your representative's mailing list to make sure that you know what he or she is doing and what they're up to and what kind of progress they're making at the legislative level. And then finally, if you're in DC on May 7th, as Warda mentioned earlier, please join us, the Polygon Education Fund, for May 7th in-person training. We'll get to run through scenarios and we'll get to run through simulations of how we can be effective advocates when it comes to advocating for our issues in front of our legislators.
All right, thank you so much, Asif and Varda. That was a fantastic presentation. Lots of really, really great information to digest. Just as a reminder, like we'll be sharing this PowerPoint with all of the participants today. If you registered on the Eventbrite page, I have your email address and I can share that with you. If you were not able to register but you are still interested in receiving more information, just send your email address to us at on the Stand With Me Facebook page, and we'll make sure to get this to you. We'll also share any of the resources and documents that they mentioned as well. With that, I'm actually going to unlock all the microphones or unmute everyone. And if you want to, please, you can ask, type them into the text box. So let us know if you have any questions.
We were that good. No questions.
So everyone knows how to engage their reps, and they're all going to go out after this and get on mailing lists and identify the topics that they're most passionate about and reach out to them.
I will just say, in order to help people with this a little bit, to make it, like, to start off, make it not so daunting, try to commit yourself to going and visiting your member maybe twice a year in district, or once a year, or organizing visits with your local mosques, your community centers, your schools, your student organizations, and trying to organize visits like a few times a year and working your way up. But you should definitely be going quarterly in order to keep that communication regular. I mean, it doesn't have to be quarterly in-person visits, but it should be some sort of communication every quarter, and in person is, of course, all the best.
Okay, there's one question in the chat box. I'll read it out loud for everyone. It's from Essen Zuffer. Since Polygon is an organization focused on American Muslim issues, are there any focus strategies that resonate with elected officials for American Muslim issues, especially since American Muslims are a very small political constituency?
Asif, do you want to take a turn?
No. Oh, it should be there.
Okay, I don't know. Okay, I'll go ahead and take that. So it is true that Muslims are a small political constituency. We're only 3.3 million in the United States. At the same time, there are certain districts where Muslims are in such large numbers where it actually does make an impact, and where members of Congress would want to listen to them because of large donor base. And so the thing with Polygon is we don't advocate just on quote-unquote Muslim issues. Obviously, Islamophobia and bullying are big issues for us. Civil rights is a big issue for us, but we do our work with coalition, right? So we're not just doing this isolated. So we'll join with other groups for their civil rights, and we will join with other groups who are also facing bullying. Also, another big issue that we're doing is the economy. So it's actually, I mentioned the ISPU had a study that what the top issues for Muslim Americans are, and one of the top issues was the economy. So there are other issues that Muslims care about that they can join on coalition with other people who are not necessarily a Muslim background, and that's how you build power in numbers. If we were to just advocate on Muslim issues or only talk about Muslim issues, we wouldn't go as far. We would only go in certain communities. But because we understand that there's power in numbers, we want to be sure to work with other people, serve as allies for other communities, and encourage them to serve as allies. And so by doing that, we would hope to be able to make the most impact.
Kind of echoing on that, and this is Atia from Stand With Me, I think that what you're also adding to that is that building coalitions with the different organizations is definitely one of the key ways which we can build or increase our political power too. So it's important for the different organizations to come together, because a lot of us are fighting the same fight, and we're all doing it in different ways. And by coming together, we can increase our own political clout. Are there any other questions? Feel free to just speak on your microphone or type it in the chat box. All right, if there's no more questions, we can wrap this up. As always, remember the Polygon's information is up on the slide and also standwithmenow.com. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to all of us through our websites or find us on Facebook. We're more than happy to continue this conversation and do other types of trainings with you or any other individuals as well. So thank you once again for joining today, and thank you for Polygon for joining us and leading this awesome discussion.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for meeting up here. And thanks everyone for joining.